In this video, I'm going to review a lot of the rules and basics of one-point perspective drawing. So whether you are still practicing to become comfortable with this, or if you're ready to start your final, this will work as or serve as a good resource for you. So we're not going to draw a horizon line this time because we know that most of that will be erased for this particular drawing. So instead, I'm just going to identify what looks like it's close to the middle of the page. It doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to draw a small dot. Everything we do at this point, we should be drawing lightly because we're not worried about the shading or the finalization yet. We just want to ensure that our lines are correct and accurate, and we need the ability to erase mistakes so that we can correct them. So don't draw too dark. And in this area that's closest to the vanishing point, I'm going to begin drawing some shapes. I don't want to draw shapes that are way out here yet because those are going to be our overlapping areas. So I'm going to use my straight edge tool and I'm going to begin assembling just some shapes that I find interesting. You're more than welcome to draw basic shapes, squares, rectangles, circles, triangles. You could certainly draw any of those. Maybe I'll draw a rectangle right here. But be sure that you're also drawing custom shapes. And the reason I'd like to see custom shapes is those are unique to you, your mind, your imagination. So I've got a couple shapes right here. I'm going to continue just drawing a few more. I'm going to make some of these a bit more complex as I go. The more corners a shape has, typically the more complex it's going to look. So I have 3 that are on the top. Now I'm going to draw a few more so that I really want to have the vanishing point surrounded. I'm going to do a shape that has a curve to it right here. All right, so I've got 4 of them down. Now let me figure out what I'd like to put right here. I think I'm going to do a round shape right at the bottom, so one that looks circular. I'm not going to worry about using a stencil. I'm just going to draw using my entire arm. Try to create a circle shape. And then once I'm able to see it, I'm going to clean up the outer edge so I could take the best parts of it, what look like the roundest areas. And then I'm going to clean that up using an eraser. I haven't used this one during class, but I like this style of eraser. It works like a mechanical pencil. So if I click here, it extends the eraser at the bottom. And it makes it really easy to handle these like tighter, more detailed areas. Okay, I just cleaned that up. I've got my circle. And last but not least, I need a shape down here. So I'm just going to throw together a couple lines and see what I have. All right, there are my initial shapes. Notice that the vanishing point is here, and these shapes are close proximity to the vanishing point. I'm going to draw these back first. And then after they're drawn back to the dot, I could start a second layer of shapes out here. This layer is all going to be overlapped, and that will add a real 3D effect to the drawing. For now, the only thing I need to do is draw corners back to the dot. So I'm starting with my pencil on the vanishing point, lining up my straight edge tool, and trying to keep my lines as straight as I could possibly keep them. I've got one shape done. When you do this for multiple shapes on the page at a time, it feels like it goes much quicker. And it's, in my opinion, a little easier too, because I'm just repeating the same step over and over and over again. Don't forget, when you have corners that are opposite the vanishing point, like this one, or both of these, they don't need to go back to the dot. We wouldn't see the lines from them. So I wouldn't draw them here because they would go through the shape. And I wouldn't draw them here because there's just no need to see that. It's actually confusing if we see that because then it makes it seem like the shape is transparent. It should just be the corners that are facing the vanishing point. Sometimes there's an exception, but we'll cover that together. Okay, so I'm continuing. Notice every line is going exactly to the dot. There's really no other area that lines should be aiming towards. Sometimes I see mistakes that sixth graders will make where, like right here, they'll decide to connect these two corners or connect these two corners, and we really don't need to do that at all. We only need to go back to the vanishing point every time. So I've just about done that. I'm going to mention the circle separately, since that's the roundest object here. So when you deal with an object that's round, it doesn't have corners. That's what makes it round. So it doesn't, we can't find corners like we do here to go back to the vanishing point, but we can find an edge. So if I start from the vanishing point and move my straight edge inwards, the first place that this touches on the right side is going to be drawn back, and the first place this touches on the left side is going to be drawn back. That is all I would need for a circular shape. Just those two lines. And what that represents, I'll show you if I do an echo line effect here. If I memorize this curve and I draw it again, I consider that to be echoing the line. It's literally just the line repeating. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. This just indicates to our eye that we're looking at a round area here. Like the entire path to the vanishing point is going to have this same curve as the circle. And I'll let you guys decide. These echo lines, I think they look cool. You know, they add a lot to the drawing in terms of that three-dimensional quality, but they could be tricky to understand, so we'll consider them to be optional, whether or not you include echo lines. If I wanted to include echo lines for one of my shapes that isn't round, I would use my straight edge, and I would first repeat one edge of the shape. So right here, this line, I'm just going to repeat over and over again. And it's going to look like the line is getting shorter in length as it gets closer to the vanishing point because of how narrow this is getting. And then on the other side, I would match this angle. So the angle of this line, I would draw that back, and I would try my best to keep it parallel on both sides. Okay, in the next video, you're going to see how to actually shade these shapes in and how to shade shapes with echo lines. For right now, I just want to continue showing you the process of adding these shapes. So I'm going to draw some more shapes on the outside now. So this is the region outside of the shapes we've already completed. And you can already see that we're going to see some overlapping with this because the corners of this shape are located here, and their path to the vanishing point is going to be obstructed. And that's exactly what we want. That makes this look extra 3D. So I think I'm going to do only custom shapes, and I'm going to throw in a few tricky areas too, so we know what to do if we see those. So these two shapes are more or less basic. I'm going to do a shape shooting through a shape down here. Let's do some tricky stuff. Let's have a shape where we have multiple corners on the front side. And I might do another basic shape up here. Let me do a square shape, except I'm going to have it on an angle so that it looks more like a diamond. Right, that's what my paper is looking like for the time being. And you know what? Let me connect these first, and then we'll deal with this area. So I'm going to connect these back the same way that I did here. The big exception is the overlapping that we need to keep in mind. So starting here, I'm going to place my pencil at the vanishing point. I still want the edges from this shape to go back to the dot. That didn't change. The only thing that changes is the lines are going to be cut short. So I have this corner placed along this dot with the ruler. I'm going to draw this back, but as soon as it hits the shape that gets in the way, the line is going to stop. And the idea is that it should look like that line would continue to the vanishing point, but we don't see it because it goes behind the other shape. So that would really be considered an optical illusion in this case. Okay, the idea that this shape could be occupying space behind this one, it makes this shape feel like it's popping out more towards us, and this is a little further away from us, or on a different angle. So I'm going to do that same thing here, always going back to the vanishing point. That never changes. You should have 0 lines on your paper that are going anywhere other than the vanishing point. So I don't want to connect this corner over here. I don't want to have this line going up there or anything, because that's not the vanishing point. The vanishing point is always right here. And again, by laying out multiple shapes at a time, it does help to speed up this process. It becomes so much more repetitious. I've got this shape down here at the bottom. Looks sort of like a W. This is one of the first shapes that had an interior corner, and those get drawn back as well. So an exterior corner comes up, an interior corner goes in, that goes to the vanishing point, but we wouldn't draw any of the corners on this side. Okay, opposite the vanishing point, we don't need those corners, only the ones facing it. And I'm on my last shape right here. Sometimes you'll get really narrow passageways between corners, like you can see the space between these two, but we still need to see it. This travels back, and now look at how much this is starting to look like a cluster of shapes on this side. We have layers, like a shape here, then a shape behind it. I could see a line that's going to the vanishing point and gets cut short. If I double check any of these lines, I see they're all going to the dot, and that's what makes this feel 3D to our eye. Now, I would consider this to be the intermediate level when we're handling all of these overlapping scenarios. Advanced level, shapes shooting through shapes. Let's try one on both sides. The first thing I'm going to do a square shape to keep this simple. I'm going to draw a shape the same way we did at the beginning of this video, which is going to look like this. And I'm going to draw the corners back to the vanishing point, and wherever they hit a shape that gets in the way, they're going to stop. And in my case, all 3 corners disappear behind these shapes. So now I have this shape placed on the lower right. We haven't done this for the other shapes, but I'm going to draw an opening on the surface that's going to serve as a window. So I'm drawing a line that's parallel to this edge, a line that's parallel to this edge, a line that's parallel to the top edge, and the line that's parallel to the edge on the left. So now I have what looks like a window that would represent that there's a hollow opening in this shape. If I want to have a shape shooting through here, I need to start at the vanishing point so I could see a path that that shape would be following. So I'm going to place my ruler here. So I'm starting at the dot, and then I'm just finding a spot that looks like it's fairly centered within this opening, and I'm drawing a dotted line. This allows me to know the path that my smaller shape could be following. So I want to make or draw a shape that's smaller than the opening here. I wouldn't want to draw a shape that's bigger than this opening. So I'm going to do that now, but it's going to be placed right here, like centered on that dotted line. I think what I'm going to do is draw a shape that looks like this. And I'm going to round out this middle piece. Okay? It didn't have to be this shape for any specific reason. I just thought that that would look interesting. So here's my small shape. Now I can erase this dotted line, and I'm going to draw this shape back to the vanishing point. However, it's going to look like it's disappearing into this opening. I think of that as like a picture frame, is how I picture this. So when I line up this corner to the dot, it's going to travel back, but it's going to disappear right there once it hits this line. That same thing is going to happen from corner number 2, and corner number 3, and 4, and 5, and in my case, 6. I have 6 corners that I could see. Here's what that looks like. It's a little bit confusing right now because we have actual overlapping taking place here. So I'm going to use my eraser, and I'm going to remove the areas from the original shape that get overlapped by the smaller shape. And when I do that, we should actually be able to see the visual effect that we were going for. So now we can observe this shape is traveling back, but it looks like it's shooting right through that larger shape that we created that had the window cut out of it. This smaller shape looks like it's shooting out of that window, but still traveling back to the vanishing point. If I do a little bit of shading right here in the remaining area of the window, that should make it a bit easier for our eye to follow, so I'm going to do that. On our final copy, the inside of these windows, we'll either shade them in pencil like I'm doing right now, or if you're working in color, we'll make them a different color than what's happening on the surface of the shape. So there is an advanced technique of having one shape that travels back to the vanishing point and another shape traveling back that's shooting through the center. I'm going to do one more of those on this side to help balance that out. So I'll start with a different kind of shape. Let me say, I'm going to use a shape that looks like this. What I'm doing really is just following the edge of the shapes that this is next to. So I just kind of mimic that edge for this, which helps to make it feel like these go together like puzzle pieces. I'm drawing corners back to the vanishing point. Now I'm going to draw a window on the surface. This time the window is not going to look like rectangular, but it doesn't have to. It just needs to follow each edge of your shape so it looks parallel. Pretty much I'm doing that. Okay, now I'm going to clean this up. The next step is to start from the vanishing point and line your ruler up so that you're centered in that window, and then draw a dotted line. So we have our path going back. This time I'm going to do a circular shape. So I'm going to draw a circular shape that I know can fit into this area. That might look like this one. I'm going to clean up the edge. I'm going to use my eraser to clean up all of my construction lines so I don't see so many of those from when I was drawing with my whole arm to form this circle. And I'm going to erase the dotted line because now I've already positioned this. And we know for a circle we only need 2 lines back to the vanishing point. One is on the first edge we touch, the other is on the last edge we touch. So 2 total. I'm going to erase this area from the original shape so it's clear to see this is in front. And I'm going to use my echoing technique so I can draw echo lines that repeat this curve of the circle. And I think that'll be a cool way of just indicating that this is a 3D situation we're looking at. And here's what I've created. So if I wanted to complete this, I would make sure to add shapes here and in any other open area, but I'm on my way on the final copy. In the next video, we'll talk shading.